You're listening to Unhooked. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the sixth part in the series of sticking with your habit change. It's about how to make your habits intrinsically captivating and intrinsically rewarding. You definitely don't want to miss this one. So, stay tuned.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and with over 12 years of meditation experience as a mindfulness trainer and coach for high performers, I've become obsessed with helping people break free from compulsive, unhealthy behaviors and addictions and step into a life of true freedom so that they can finally become their best selves and cultivate deeper and lasting fulfillment. I've created Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast, to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to master your mind and optimize your life. This is Unhooked. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Jeremy Lipkowitz here, your host of the Unhooked podcast radio here in Bali on a Sunday evening, and I am in my little podcast recording studio coming to you to bring you this episode. And I wanted to start today with a little side story from my life, something that's going to be relevant for today's topic. And this is a new sport that I've been getting into, and it's something that some of you may know. It's called paddle or padel, and it is a phenomenally captivating sport. It just something that is it hooks you, and it has hooked so many of my friends and people I hang out with. And this is something that I started playing when I was back in Amsterdam. Got invited to a match with some friends and just did it for fun. And I was instantly hooked. I just had so much fun playing that I, basically got hooked right away, and I was thinking about it nonstop. And I started playing more frequently. And when I got here to Bali, I also reached out to some friends who I knew were playing and started playing with them. And now it's at the point where I'm playing 2-3 times a week. I am totally addicted to the sport. I can't wait until the next time I get to play. I'm constantly thinking about the next time I'm going to play. I'm even watching YouTube videos about highlights of paddle and proper technique. And it is something that has totally hijacked my brain. And it's a healthy thing. I'm getting out, I'm exercising, I'm meeting people, so it's totally beneficial that it has hijacked me and captivated me. And that is the topic for today, which is if you can find habits that are captivating, you're more likely to stick with them. And this is almost too obvious to have a podcast episode about, but if we really break it down, you can use this understanding to cultivate those healthy habits in your life. So with something like paddle, it might be easy, but with something like going to the gym or eating healthy or meditating or breaking free from porn, it might not be so simple. And so in the podcast today, we're going through this force of making things captivating as a way to cultivate lasting and sustainable behavior change. So we are on the Porn Addiction podcast radio. We're talking about breaking free from some of these compulsive habits. And if that's what you're working on, then you will definitely need to be implementing healthy lifestyle in your life. Whether it's exercising more, eating healthier, sleeping more regularly, connecting with friends, all of these things are going to be beneficial for you. So today, again, part 6 in the series. We're looking at the book, Stick With It, by Dr. Sean Young. Again, if you are new to this series, go back to the first in the series where I introduce what this is all about, because this is part 6. To explore this topic of captivating, first I want to take you to the dark side of captivating, which is the ways that captivating things can become addictions or steal our life force or our energy. And if you're on this podcast, one of the things that is captivating that might have stolen a lot of your life force and energy and happiness is porn. And part of the reason is that porn is simply a very captivating substance. It can hook you. It can make you feel like time is just flying by. It is intrinsically rewarding in the sense of it's giving you pleasure and dopamine in the moment. And there are many things in our society that are captivating in this way. So for myself, when I was a child, I used to play a lot of video games with friends. I would play, these computer games, and I would get hooked on them, to the point where I was staying up until 3 a.m., 4 a.m., sometimes 5 or 6 in the morning with friends playing video games. And it can really hook you. And, porn addiction is one thing, but video game addiction is totally another. But it's also our cell phones, social media, all of these things that we have in our society are so captivating. And it's why we form such strong habits around them. We can spend hours and hours in front of our screens. And this is exactly why we need to understand this powerful force, this force of captivating, so that we can use it for good. Because there's so much financial interest in trying to get us hooked on social media, on different apps, on Netflix, whatever it is, that we have to understand this so that we can fight against it and use that same force to cultivate healthy habits. So in this episode, I want to share 5 ways to make your healthy habits more captivating. So these are 5 different strategies or tips or things that might not be obvious that you can do to intentionally cultivate healthy behaviors. So number 1 is to make doing the right thing fun. And so, for example, if you need to exercise more, find ways to make exercise something that you actually enjoy. So if you don't enjoy going to the gym, if it's just too much of a chore, maybe you need to find something more interesting, like a sport like paddle or rock climbing, or even VR boxing, something that actually feels fun and joyful to you. If you want to eat healthier, finding ways to make that fun. You might start splurging on restaurants that actually have healthy food and taste good. Or you might take up cooking and find ways to make that an enjoyable process. So that is number 1, is make doing the right thing or the healthy thing fun. Tip number 2 is to use the carrot instead of the stick. And so this is about whether or not you are using fear or joy as a motivator. And while it is true that fear can motivate people and get them into action, there's a lot of research showing that it's not sustainable. And the reason being is that fear actually triggers people into reactivity or avoidance. So rather than taking action on the thing and going to the thing you need to go to, you might end up being more reactive. You might avoid the thing altogether. So instead of fear-based solutions for sticking with habits, we can use positive reinforcements, captivating rewards. So for example, finding a personal trainer that motivates you and encourages you, rather than one who is hurling abuses or making you feel like a piece of shit. Okay? So that is number 2, use the carrot instead of the stick. Number 3 is to not assume that some extrinsic rewards are the best rewards. So things like money or treating yourself to ice cream if you run a certain amount of miles, or buying yourself a new watch if you meditate frequently enough. These kind of extrinsic rewards are things that might actually make you feel less motivated to stick with your habits. So there's a famous study of kids that were, asked to paint in classrooms. And they showed that the ones who were rewarded for doing more artwork actually painted less. And the ones who weren't rewarded painted more. So there's some aspect to this where when we get rewarded extrinsically for doing something we intrinsically enjoy, we feel less motivated to do that thing. So just, the key takeaway here is maybe think about not treating yourself for sticking with your healthy habits, but just focus on making the habit intrinsically rewarding. Make it something that you enjoy doing on its own. So again, playing a sport that you like, finding ways to make your meditation or your journaling practice more enjoyable by doing it in a peaceful place, maybe socializing or building community in a place where you feel connected. Again, finding ways to make it intrinsically rewarding. Tip number 4 is understanding that education or information alone won't work. So again, there's a lot of research showing that just giving yourself or giving other people information about why they should do certain things or not do certain things isn't really going to make the difference on its own. So for example, people know that smoking is bad for their health, and diabetics know that too much sugar can be harmful for their condition. And yet, for many of these people, there's no lifestyle or habit change. So instead of information, what we need is emotion. Finding ways to tap into your own psychology, your emotion. One of the ways I like doing this is to ask yourself, what would it mean for you if you could stick with this? Or how would you feel if you could really cultivate this new habit or behavior? So tapping into the emotional side of it rather than just the information or the education. Finally, tip number 5, and this is in some ways a summary of the whole podcast episode, is find ways to make your habit intrinsically rewarding. Find ways to make it enjoyable, to have fun with the things you want to do. The bottom line here is, if you do not enjoy whatever habit it is you're trying to cultivate, you're not going to stick with it. And instead, learning how to, in some way, enjoy the process. Whether you gamify it, turning whatever it is into a little bit of a game, turning it into a competition, finding ways to enjoy the process. So for myself with paddle, I just love playing. It's so fun, and it gets me excited about going and meeting people and exercising and working my brain and working my body. You can do this with anything. So some examples of healthy habits that I personally find rewarding. Sports is a great one. Paddle, rock climbing, HIIT classes. They're things that I enjoy in the moment. I'm not doing it just because of the outcome, right? Skills, skill sets, what my friend calls a skills crucible, are also things you can cultivate that might be intrinsically rewarding. So for example, learning a martial art or learning skills like how to invest or entrepreneurship, how to build a business. Another one that I enjoy is producing podcast episodes. The editing, the mixing, all of that is something I really enjoy intrinsically. Another thing that I find intrinsically rewarding is eating fresh and healthy, real food. So, of course, I also find eating junk food rewarding just in terms of the mouth pleasure it gives me. But we're not talking about necessarily the bad ones. We're talking about how do you cultivate these good ones. And, for me, eating just a nice, juicy steak with some veggies on the side is very rewarding. It makes me feel good, and I enjoy it in the moment. Now, one last concept about this topic of captivating that the book introduces and that is going to be helpful for you is that there are 2 different types of captivating fixes that you can employ. So the first one is called the quick fix. And this is the intrinsic reward that you get in the moment of doing the habit. So just like when you're training a dog, if you ask your dog to sit and then it sits, and then an hour later you give the dog a treat, it's not going to get that quick fix reward, right? You need to do it in the moment. So for a healthy habit, this is whatever immediate reward you get, whether it's praise from your friends, or it could be a dopamine hit of some sort, or it could be, the joy of seeing yourself mastering a new skill. So that quick fix is very important here, finding ways to have that in-the-moment reward. Now, the second type of captivating fix is something that they call in the book the trick fix. And this is about understanding the psychology behind habit formation. So some famous experiments in the past few decades found that intermittent rewards were actually more captivating than continual awards. So, for example, if you're a rat in a cage and they are giving you a little buzzer or a little thing you can step on that gives you a treat, what they found is that if they give the rat the treat every time it steps on the buzzer, it doesn't get as addicted to it as it does if they give the rat the reward only sometimes when it presses the buzzer. So for some reason, we get more addicted, more captivated by these intermittent rewards. And they employ this in places like, casinos where they give intermittent wins. It's also why social media is so addictive, because sometimes you open up the screen and there's no notifications, and other times you open it and you have 20 notifications. So that intermittent reward is addicting. And you can actually use this to your benefit. So for something that you are trying to cultivate, like a healthy habit, you can use the understanding of the trick fix or the intermittent reward to help yourself get more captivated by the thing. So for example, rock climbing is something I really enjoy. I go bouldering with friends, and if I went bouldering and every time I went, I just did easy routes and kind of was able to complete the routes every single time, it wouldn't be as captivating as it is when I'm pushing myself, and sometimes I reach the top and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I succeed and sometimes I fail. And what that does is it gets me more entranced, more captivated, more addicted to the process of going rock climbing with friends. So finding ways that you can introduce intermittent rewards into your healthy habits is something that will be helpful for you in your habit formation. Now, all of this simply, to summarize it, is find ways to enjoy the habits you want to cultivate. Get creative. If you're not enjoying something, you might need to switch it up a little bit, fix it in some ways so that it becomes more captivating. Now, again, this is not going to be good enough on its own. We have to combine captivating with all the other forces we've talked about in this series. Step ladders, community, important, all the ones we've talked about earlier on in the series, they all work together. But finding ways to make your habit change captivating is going to supercharge your recovery from porn, and also you just being the best version of yourself, living a healthier lifestyle. So that is it for today. I wish you luck in finding ways to make your habits captivating. Once again, as I always say, if you enjoyed this episode, please do leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And that's it for today. We'll see you on the next and final episode of this series, where we're going to be looking at the step or the force of ingrained and what that's all about. All right, that's it. Much love. See you on the next episode.